Welcome to Loren Reads to You. Today I'm reading The Bedtime Killer by Loren Malloy. That's me. Now, if you haven't heard me read to you chapters 1 through 5, pause this, save this, go back, listen to chapters 1 through 4 if you'd like, and then you can come back to this if you want. Otherwise, get comfy. Let's get ready, because we're up to chapter 6 of The Bedtime Killer. Now, remember to subscribe and follow me wherever you're watching and or seeing this. All right. And let's begin. Chapter 6. Suddenly, it's very dark. Darker than nighttime. I must have hit myself too hard, Horace croaked out quietly, trying to push himself up off the floor. Horace went to push with his forearms and the heels of his hands onto the grass when he realized it felt wrong for grass. Everything smelled wrong to be waking up from being unconscious on Janet's mowed lawn. He realized right away what it was. He pushed his heels into the surface and felt the confirmation of it. Somehow, he was lying on a bed. Not just any bed. It was his own cot. He could feel it. His fingers pushed into the ripped spot in his fitted sheet from where his wristwatch buckle caught on a thread from the sheet. It smelled like him, too. Something was in one of his hands as well. It smelled like a lady. It felt like satin. Horace reached over, and sure enough, right where he thought it would be, he turned on his lamp. He looked at the thing in his hand and realized it was his favorite pair of Janet's panties. The red satin ones he's seen her put on and peel off so often. How do I got these? Horace wondered. Now that he's thinking about it, how did he get home? Shit! Horace exclaimed, panicked. Horace sat up on his cot and just stared at the red panties, mystified as how they could have possibly be in his hand. After a few moments of just staring dumbfounded at the underwear, he started getting fleeting glimpses of images. Horace began seeing the images of like an old movie playing in his head, clicking forward one still frame at a time. It was only bits and pieces, though. A window that was cracked open, allowing him to slip in. A staircase with a landing that had a picture of his Lady Janet in a sexy cocktail dress on the wall. Horace standing in her room, his hand in her hamper. Her soiled panties over his face while he took another pair and caressed little Horace with it. Then it was like a film ran out, and there was nothing more. He didn't remember leaving or driving home. He didn't even remember laying down on the bed, yet here he was with her panties in his hand. He shuddered looking at them and began to feel them in his hand. He couldn't believe it, but there it was. He turned his light off and covered his face with them again while stroking little Horace. It didn't take him long to explode all over himself. Completely exhausted and very satisfied, Horace fell asleep dreaming of red panties. In the morning, Horace woke up with Janet's underwear still on his face. He also still had little Horace in hand. He took full advantage of the situation before showering and going to work. He actually had a pretty good day at work, he thought, as he got into his truck. Little Horace didn't seem to need to have his big release today. He watched one of his lovers scrub her floor. Nothing at first happened. Little Horace seemed to be in a coma again, but then, suddenly, his mind began to mix his fantasies with his reality, and little Horace was relieved quite quickly. He was very happy about his day until he switched on the radio and heard one of the radio announcers speaking about a police report having to do with his lover, Janet Haberdasher. The radio announcer had said she had come home to a sick mess all over her house. Horace just sat in his truck stunned. He could not handle the fact that he had no recollection of it. He could hear the guys speaking in the background. It seemed Horace's memory forgot to show him how many different places in his house, in her home, he had soiled with his intimate fluids. It also turned out he left her panties, now soiled by him, all over the house. Fluid and panties everywhere. The husband finding them all over. Janet terrified. Horace remembered none of that and felt suddenly very angry. He clicked off the radio. He couldn't stand to hear another moment. He punched his steering wheel several times now. How dare his lover discuss what they did behind closed doors with others? If she didn't like something, she should have let him know, not the world. He punched the wheel one more time before a light across the street caught his attention. It was a stylish ranch owned by a young woman. He watched her on his lunch breaks sometimes. He was pretty sure she was a divorcee, and he knew she had a toddler. She seemed to care about the child, but had to share custody with some fancy rich prick. The guy was always in a tailored, expensive-looking three-piece suit and drove the latest BMW sports car. Horace usually saw him on Fridays when the guy picked up their kid. They caught his attention one Friday afternoon when the silver, sleek sports car pulled up to the ranch. The car didn't match the house. The woman came out with a little boy in her arms and yelled something like, "You're an hour late!" Horace watched them bicker for a few minutes. The guy never got out of the car, just yelled back through his open-tinted window as she put their child in the back seat. While she was doing so, Horace got a great view of her sweet, firm backside. After the guy drove off, Horace watched the woman start to cry and jog that sweet keekster into her house again. It was Friday night. He knew the kid would be out with his daddy somewhere, and she was home alone. He could see her dancing around her living room in bra and thong. It was clear she was very drunk. The off-key, loud singing he could hear from her open window, and the bottle of wine in her hand were both dead giveaways. She was yummy. Long blonde hair, nice perky rack, and a body you can only get from yoga. That lean, tone-fit look without muscular look to it. Oh, he could have a lot of fun with her. Horace got out of his truck and went in for a closer look at his newest lady. Her milk-white skin shone under the bright, harsh living room light. He could see her sweat glistening like glitter on her skin. "Girls just don't wanna have fun," was blasting from her stereo, so she never stood a chance of hearing him. Little Miss Barbie was bouncing around, using the wine bottle as a microphone. Little Horace began his dance of the one-eyed snake, which lasted for several minutes. Cyndi Lauper stopped singing before Horace was able to stop his crescendo all over Little Miss Barbie's petunias. It also didn't help that Little Miss Barbie spotted him and started screaming. Little Horace's crescendo lasted longer than usual because of her making eye contact. He could see and hear her fear. It pushed him deliciously over the edge. It took him several seconds to come back to reality after such an intense release before he realized she was calling the police. Horace zipped his pants up and ran. He jumped into his truck and sped off. All he could think about was how intense his release was and how wonderfully terrified she was of him. She would do perfectly as one of his new lovely ladies. Horace wasn't too worried about the cops. Little Miss Barbie was so trash he could hear her slurring the words on the phone as he ran away. He doubted she would be able to describe her condition as well as describe him. That is Chapter 6 of The Bedtime Killer by Loren Malloy. That's me. If you'd like to get this book for yourself, you can get it in paperback and Kindle through Amazon. Make sure you're subscribing and following wherever you're watching or seeing this. And tune in for Chapter 7 next.